Hi, my name is Kevin Mack, and this is another video about web development and design. This video is going to be a little bit shorter, and it's really focusing on a plugin that I extended recently and I've been posting about. So I figured that I would throw in a few things about web accessibility as well as how to use this plugin because it's something that I find very beneficial, and I'm probably going to use it on a lot of my projects moving forward. Side note, I went to a wedding last night. I'm a little hungover, and my buddy Mark is right there. He's standing directly in my line of vision. So if you see me looking or talking to someone, again, I'm not talking to myself or going crazy. It's just I'm literally looking at Mark, and I'm a bit hungover. So we'll see how this goes. Just like the other ones, really not practicing or putting a script together. These are more off the cuff. And if there's anything that you have any questions about, leave comments, hit me up on Twitter. I'm Nicetransition. And if there's a video that you would like me to do, let me know and I'll do that. So I'm gonna share my screen over here, but right here, this is actually a plugin that I started writing. This was a little while back ago, I would say maybe 8 months ago. And what this plugin actually did was just a toggle state. So you can look here and I click this and it toggles red. And what that's doing is, if we look at the source here, it's adding a class to the HTML here, and it's just toggling that on. So what this plugin or this line of code does is you can pass in a class, or this is the class to identify that this is the toggle. So that's what's actually calling this. And then this data class is what you would pass as an attribute to whatever element that you want. So this is the selector. So this is the CSS selector, and then this is the classes I'm applying here. So I click on that, and you can see that's toggling on foo. So foo was the class I wanted, and it goes to HTML. So if I wanted to add another class here and just say like demo1, and I click this, you'll see that, you'll see that demo1 goes on header. Come on. And really, CodePen is great, but it's really hard to do like demos inside here. But let's change this because of how the HTML reloads. But basically, all this is doing is toggling a class on here on the header and wherever I'm targeting, and you can see that it's going there and it's being removed. This is great and this works really well, but the issue with this is it doesn't follow accessibility guidelines. And the problem with that is if you want to have an application that can meet a wider range and a large audience as well as different devices, you need to write your code in a certain way to meet the standards. So the web has what they call as the web accessibility, the web content accessibility guidelines. And over the past couple of years, over the past year, they've evolved from version 2.0 to 2.1. There was actually a version that was released and rolled back. And what it does is it's the guidelines for writing and designing for the web. And what it does is it meets the people with disabilities. So if you have hearing issues, if you have vision issues, if you have motor issues, by following these guidelines and developing your code if you're developing your code around the guidelines, then you can meet the wide range of audiences. The cool thing about it is with a lot of different technology that's coming out almost every single day, these same guidelines apply to hardware. So if you've seen anything like gestures or voice being guided through an experience, those are following the web accessibility guidelines. So the same way that you're designing for people with disabilities is also the same way that the technology is being inherited for hardware. So if you're really wanting to learn on this and to cover the web content accessibility guidelines, it would probably be a more than an hour-long presentation just to go over that. And in a lot of videos coming up, I'm going to be touching on these. But what I would recommend is just going out there, doing a Google search for this, and starting to read over this. And there's a lot of great resources online that can help you out. Like if you go to WebAIM, if you go to WebAIM and you look at some of like the basic stuffs out there. So I use WebAIM color contrast all the time to make sure that my colors are meeting the contrast ratios. But there's a bunch of resources that are out there. Through the Columbus Web Group, we've done a few weekend workshops as well as different classes on it. But basically, today what we're going to be focusing on is the upgrade from this toggle class to actually meet accessibility guidelines, and then how I extended a plugin. So getting to that, there's this really great plugin that I've been using on projects, and just so you know, this alia stands for accessibility. So what it is saying that there's A, and then there's 11 characters between the A and the Y. So that's abbreviation for accessibility. If you ever see alia, it's actually A11Y. But this plugin's fantastic, and it works really, really well. The only issue was that it required you to have an ID for your target, as well as an ID to be passed inside the plugin. So if we look at the code for this and the example that they put, you'll see that I have this toggle, which has to be an ID and targeting where I'm going to do. So if I click on this button, what it would do is toggle the tags here. And what these are right here, these are the aria tags, and these are a way for the code to communicate to the user and their hardware that a box has been or some kind of element has been interacted with. So these are typically used as a off-on switch and identifies if a component has been opened or toggled in one way or another. So if I look at this, you can see that this is now was originally hidden, but now it's being shown. And I do this and the same thing happens. What this is doing is actually adding these aria tags to provide information to, again, the computer as well as the user that these things have happened. So these are kind of behind the scenes. A user wouldn't know that these are happening, but in the development code, it allows us to identify different pieces. And this is then interpreted by the browser as well as any devices that something has been interacted with. So with that, this was really great, and you can even do multiple IDs and passing them through. And he gives a bunch of examples here, multiple toggles, that do the same thing. However, for this, it's not really, if you're creating a dynamic site, you may not be able to have an ID for everything. And you may want to have something that you're toggling that's a little bit more dynamic. So in the case of right now, I'm building out the new version of Bibe. And in the new version of the Bibe app, what we're going to actually have is this toggle to view the details on products. And I'll show you that demo at the end. And for that, I needed a way to follow accessibility guidelines and also to toggle a zone. So that's where I forked his library. So what a fork is when you take a repository in Git and you make a copy of it, and that copy of it is then inside your own repo. So you can see that this is now Nicetransition alia toggle. It's available on my GitHub on Nicetransition, and you can see my changes that I've made to the code. By looking at this, and we look at, let's look at commits, you can see my updates that I had here and what I did. So initially I added something, and then I was testing it, I added a few more things, and I did the dumb mistake of not forgetting to remove my console logs. But inside here, this code, you can see these are the commits and the actual code that has been updated if I were to click on this. So you can see any of the updates and the removal of pieces and the addition. So this was actually my addition to this library to extend it to now allow for classes. On my CodePen, which is codepen.io/Nicetransition, if you look at my public stuff, I have this demo out here. And this is just some basic CSS, but these are the different examples that we have here. So what we now can do is a data target. As opposed to looking at ID, I can use any CSS selector. And then what that does is it generates an ID on both the button itself and that target zone. So before this library actually runs, it generates an ID, and those IDs are required for the aria tags, so you can toggle things on and off, and screen readers as well as devices can understand it and following through the accessibility guidelines. So by doing this, this is div plus div, meaning any div that follows directly after another div will get this applied to it. So if I look at this, it goes to this, which is this div and this div. So this is that test one right there. So that's the first one, and you can toggle back and forth. So it's using those as a selector. This target is just following the traditional way of doing it. So this was the out of the box. It's just looking at an ID. So if you're using this, this is the default setup of that alley toggle and just the ID itself. This is looking at a more complex, high specificity selector. It's span first of type. So even though here I have two different spans, it is looking at the first of type. I do this and it toggles that. So these other ones here are just basic div. This is the DOM here, so you can kind of play around in here. But where this gets kind of cool is I've added in what I call the next. In CSS, there's really no way to say contextually that I want to go from this div element to my next one. So I can't say like this plus this or this plus sign, whatever that selector is, to get that output. I actually have to give it a name itself. And that's where I wrote this next piece, which then takes the JavaScript side and it creates an ID for it first, and then generates the selector inside here. So you can actually say this and have its next sibling to it have a class applied to it, which will then follow the accessibility guidelines. So we look at this and I hit next. Oops. What it's doing is it's taking this and the next div that's there. If I put something else here, I put hi, what it would actually do is add it on that hi as opposed to this. So it's looking at the next one. Why this is really beneficial is it allows me to create toggles and to have something that will look at literally the next sibling. And this is a pretty common setup for your code. To show you some other examples of how this could work, just if I put like an H1 somewhere on this page, and I just said hello world, to target it from here, this button, I would just put H1. And now if I hit this H1, let's give it a name. The H1 is getting toggled. I could give it a class if I wanted to. So I could say class banana and putting dot banana in here. That gets it. Or if I wanted to say something like H1 plus the next, anything afterwards, it will get that. So it becomes a really flexible way of doing this and to building this out. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to show you a demo here really quick of the Vibe one. So give me one quick second as I pull this up. Mark, any questions so far?
A lot.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Is this making sense?
Too.
Are you having the best time ever watching me?
I never want it to end.
Yeah.
Can we do this all day?
Yeah, I think this is what we'll do literally all day today. I'm more than happy to make that dream come true for you, Mark.
Perfect.
All right, cool. So looking at this guy here, here is the rewrite of the Vibe app that is being worked on right now. As I said in other videos, that we were moving from React Native to React.js, and it's going to be a fully responsive experience. So if anyone's uses Vibe, you can see that this is almost one for one, but it's now web-based, and we wanted to follow best practices. Oops. So this looks very similar to like what we have today on the Vibe app. But anyways, inside here we have these product details, and if I click on these, it toggles. And so what this is actually looking at is in using that plugin, and if I look at my code here, it just says the data component right here. Oh, yeah, so if I look at the actual view source code, so this is what's actually kind of cool about this. If I look at the view source code here, and we go to this guy, it has next targeted here. But when it actually gets generated on the page, it overwrites it. So that's what I was saying. It generates this ID for whatever I'm targeting. So it was saying next, and this guy gets an ID generated, and that ID becomes the control for the accessibility. and then it's also showing like the expanded and non-expanded version of it. So this kind of takes care of all the accessibility guidelines for you and anything that you need. And really all you have to do is just understand how selectors work, or if you put next afterwards, it will generate it for you. And you can use it on everything, such as the menu is doing the same thing, and this guy right here. So allows for a lot of flexibility. The last thing that I'm going to say and kind of wrap up here is when it comes to accessibility, it really is just following the best practices of the W3C org and how you should properly write HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So this isn't necessarily seen as like an upsell or something that you should be charging. It's just really the best practices of writing the web. And if you follow the standards of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, most likely you are actually following the guidelines for web accessibility. And some of these ones like the aria tag are a little bit more of a pain to do. They're considered level 2 accessibility, and that's the kind of mid-type criteria for any corporation, especially bank and healthcare. But if you're writing your code, definitely follow the web content accessibility guidelines, and hopefully you use this plugin. It's on my GitHub. If you have any questions, please hit me up. As I said, I'm Nicetransition on Twitter, and Nicetransition on CodePen, and I'm Nicetransition also on GitHub. So I'm just Nicetransition. So please feel free to hit me up. Let me know how I can help you out. And if you have any questions about web accessibility, I can spin off and do more videos. And my next one, hopefully I won't be hungover and so rambly. But I hope this was helpful for you. And I hope everyone's having a great Sunday. So see ya. Yeah, Mark, you can clap. Yeah. Yes. All right, thanks, Mark.